Hello, I'm Rochelle, and this is episode 162 of the Genuine Realtor Show, which airs every Friday. If you're considering a move to Waterdown, Ontario, the wonderful Hamilton community perched on top of the Niagara Escarpment, this one's for you. Ready? Let's go. Welcome to beautiful Waterdown, a unique part of Hamilton's growth plan, and it offers the city conveniences with a somewhat small town feel. I had written this wonderful excerpt on the history of Waterdown, but it began to get a little long and I decided that it deserves a video of its own one day. So for now, I'll just say, the original stewards of these lands were here as early as 7,500 BCE until 1792, when the British Crown purchased a large sum of land from the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations. It was then amalgamated with a few neighboring communities to create Flamborough in 1974, and then again by Hamilton in 2001 when the province decided to really push for development. If you're curious what amalgamation is or why Hamilton is such a big, sprawling city, please feel free to check out my previous video on amalgamation. So let's get to our first pro. Waterdown's location is pretty spectacular. It's a unique community where they strive to achieve a small town feel, but still have their own wonderful amenities as well as access into Hamilton and Burlington for city fun like waterfront access or to catch a game. But is still under an hour from Toronto, Guelph, and Niagara Falls wine country, as well as all of the Niagara Falls adventures. It's kind of the best of all worlds if you're looking for a somewhat slower suburb lifestyle. Which leads us to our next pro, the nature spaces. Now, being set atop the Niagara Escarpment means that you have access to these amazing views, a multitude of hiking trails to explore throughout the Bruce Trail, the local waterfalls, and 3 conservation areas nearby, many of which you can check out on my Nature Spaces playlist here on YouTube. It's also home to 13 urban parks, including Waterdown Memorial Park, which offers an assortment of ways to enjoy the space, like the skate park, the loop, the splash pad, the playground, the sports fields, and more. Now, if you are finding this helpful, please like the video, subscribe, and click that bell to turn on notifications so you don't miss any of my future episodes. So as amazing as Waterdown is, one of the biggest cons of living here is the traffic flow, not only into the town, but also east-west through the town along Dundas. The main route into Waterdown is along Dundas Street, a long stretch of road that over time has become increasingly urbanized and extends well beyond the length of the town. Waterdown, like many communities in centuries past, developed their downtown around the main road, and as such, there is difficulty in expanding the roadway while protecting the heritage of the core. This creates a bottleneck during peak times, frustrating many drivers in the process. The City of Hamilton has been working to alleviate the pressure since the early 2000s with a focus on improving transportation and traffic management. New roadway corridors are now underway, including a bypass that will extend north of the town. So if you are considering Waterdown, pay attention to those future expansions and how they would impact your enjoyment of a home. Now, on that note, let's look at our next con, the highway and GO Transit access. Now, if you've been perusing websites about the area, you've likely read about easy highway access. But easy and available are 2 pretty different concepts in my mind. So let's start with yes, there are highway arteries, but Waterdown is essentially broken into 2 halves, east and west. The west end has convenient access to Highway 6, which quickly connects you to the QEW and 403 down the escarpment, or allows you to connect to the 401 a fair ways north. Right now and historically, it's been a pain to commute, but there is hope with the new bypass. East Waterdown traffic will hopefully find its rhythm once that bypass corridor is complete. This would take you around the outskirts of the current planned developments and down Waterdown Road to the nearest GO station and another entrance onto the 403 and QEW. So yes, there are major highways nearby, but not all locations within Waterdown are as accessible as others. And if you're relying on the GO transit system, you may find yourself putting more weight into the homes east of Hamilton Street. If you are considering a move to Waterdown, be aware that while there are jobs within the town itself and more commercial spaces are underway, many residents end up either commuting down the escarpment into Hamilton and beyond, or off towards the Greater Toronto area. If you're able to work from home or find something locally, that's awesome. But if your job security is tied to another location, you may want to consider future opportunities within your commuting comfort zone. Now let's talk about our next pro, the community. First of all, the people are the heart of this town, and together they create a wonderful atmosphere for families. As I mentioned earlier, the town of Waterdown is divided in two. We've got East and West Waterdown, but for some people, they really do feel that there are three, with the historic downtown core being its own. If you're enjoying a walk around downtown, it's easy to see why one might feel that way, as the historic core is essentially surrounded by subdivisions. With heritage buildings, large lots of differing sizes, mature trees creating beautiful canopies overhead, and each home different from the next. Some streets in Waterdown's core stand distinctly apart from the rest of town. Wrapped around the historic core are the more modern style subdivisions with standardized lot sizes and planned community layouts. The first subdivision, Waterdown Heights, is just north of that historic core and was established in 1945. Since then, more subdivisions have continued to be developed around the main roads, and as those filled out, more were added onto the outskirts, creating a kind of time warp as you drive in from the country. If you're curious about prices, I will link my Waterdown page in the description below so you can do a deep dive into what the current price trends are, and it is updated quarterly. So all of the sprawl we were just chatting about correlates to our next con, the taxes. Now, if you're looking at all of Hamilton, Waterdown's taxes are certainly not the highest when comparing neighborhoods, but there are still some things to consider. First, people who are considering Waterdown will also likely be considering Burlington and other nearby cities. It's important to pay attention to the yearly taxes, as they are factored into how much you can pay when financing a home. And since Hamilton does run on the higher end of the municipal tax spectrum here in Ontario, this is worth mentioning. Next is a little more nuanced. Pay attention to the age of the homes inside Waterdown. There's a difference in taxes when comparing a newly built home to an older one, and while there are benefits to buying newer, taxes aren't one of them. So what kind of difference are we talking? Well, all things considered equal, so square footage, lot size, etc., a 1,070 square foot townhouse built in 1993 would owe about $3,470 this year, while the similar home built today on the same lot size would be closer to $3,590. Now, this is just a ballpark, and the differences will vary, but it is something you'll want to pay attention to when purchasing. Luckily, there are a lot of wonderful amenities to put some of those tax dollars to good use right here in Waterdown, which leads us to our next pro. From the Waterdown Library to the Flamborough YMCA to nearby Elements Casino or Harry Howell Twin Pad Arena, or around at a local golf course, or even enjoying the 4 main shopping districts, there's definitely lots to do in this part of Hamilton. With wonderful locally run businesses in the area who would love your support, and a large influx of big box stores, you can find pretty much everything right here on the escarpment. Now, Waterdown may seem like a typical suburban community with a flair for the historic, but one thing that is missing from the community is housing for our aging demographic. Waterdown has a shortage of main floor living plans and senior living options. With limited places to go, a lot of seniors unfortunately venture outside of Waterdown when the time comes, but with all of the developments, there's hope that some will be built in the future. But for our younger crowd, let's talk about the schools. Waterdown is home to 5 publicly funded schools and is busable to the nearby private schools if you'd like to go that route. Publicly funded schools in Waterdown all typically rate average or above in the Fraser Institute rating system, which is one of the most consulted resources for evaluating school performance here in Ontario. Its data is based on province-wide statutory tests, and the Fraser Institute compiles the data into a handy, searchable database so you can do a deep dive into your options. I will link it below. Just remember, test results aren't the full picture, so recent first-hand accounts are important to consider as well. Thank you so much for joining me for a tour of Waterdown. I do hope you have picked up some new tidbits. If you ever need my help, please feel free to reach out. Until next week, keep it genuine.